Good afternoon, everyone. It's Hugh from Bearded Philosophy. Hey, Sean, I hope you're well. Thank you for your recent video yesterday on cancel culture. I found it very interesting. I thought you raised some great points and some questions. So I wanted just to upload a quick response to some of those points leading into our live broadcast that we're going to do and cover this topic in way more detail tomorrow, I believe at 4 p.m. So you raised the point, when is it appropriate to expect an apology from someone? Should they be cancelled or taken off air for something they said 10 or 20 years ago? Should we be judging them based on the voice that they had 10 or 20 years ago versus the voice that they have now? And ultimately, this topic in general, like many of the ones that we cover, are multi-layered. It's a very complicated issue, and I don't think there's a right and a wrong answer to this immediately. I think we need to look at a number of factors, and here are a few off the top of my head. First of all, what timeframes are we dealing with here? So if someone said something a couple of months ago versus 20 years ago, we're looking at it with very different lenses. And I think we need to be really honest and transparent about that. That doesn't make it right. And I'm not suggesting an apology isn't needed for that. But we need to be real with and honest with ourselves with how society has judged, laughed, or accepted certain words or phrases or actions over time. And 10 or 20 years ago, things have changed a great deal. And I think we need to be very honest with how we assess actions and words. Next, you've got the intent behind that, which I think could be one of the most important factors to consider. For example, a stand-up comedian is there to try and make people laugh. A large part of humor could be pushing the boundaries and seeing how far you can take a joke. Whenever you do that creatively, you're going to overstep the mark. You're going to go too far, and you're no longer going to be funny and outrageous, and actually you're going to offend people. However, your intent is to make someone laugh. So in Kevin Hart's example, which is quite a well-known recent example where he was taken off hosting the Oscars because of a joke that he put out on Twitter a number of years ago. Well, Kevin Hart was trying to be funny. He wasn't funny. It was a poor joke at best, and I can understand why some people weren't happy with it. For those of you that don't know, he joked that if his son, I'm bastardizing this a little bit, but basically if his son admitted that he was gay, then he would, I think, beat him over the head with his doll's house because of it. So Kevin Hart was taken off hosting the Oscars because of that. But the intent was to try and be funny. I don't think he was funny. I think it was poor. However, I don't truly believe that he would actually go ahead and do that, is responsible behind that. Now, some people might argue and counter it, rightfully so, that maybe just insinuating that is, supporting that type of behavior, which I think is a fair point. But I honestly don't believe that that's what he meant to do or would have done, in all honesty. He was trying to be funny and he wasn't. So we've got timescales and intent, which I think are really important. I think there's also the severity of what they've actually said. I think generally speaking, as a society, I think that the media in particular, we fall in the highly sensitive bracket. And I think there's danger to that. I think it's coming from a good place, but I think we're being offended by almost everything. Again, I'm not suggesting that the Kevin Hart example or any other example doesn't warrant an apology. But what I'm saying is I think I'd like to come at it from more of a default, from like a Stoic philosopher, and trying to be a bit stronger coming into this and not so easily offended, I think, as a default. That's not to suggest that we're not to be offended, but I feel that people are being brandished with the same brush, and the severity of what they're saying, what I've seen, is it can be quite dramatically different. So I think we need to take that into account with a couple of the other points that I mentioned. I think another point that I considered is who they are now, and I think Kevin Hart is a really good example of that. I think it was a crying shame that he was taking off the Oscars, because he's such an inspiration to so many young Black males and females, poor people that have come up from very little single parent household to a hugely successful entrepreneur, one of the biggest stand-up comedians in the world. He's a massive actor as well, multiple business owner. I mean, if you hear him in any of the interviews that he's done recently, he's like, he's been through Tony Robbins' system. He's like a self-help guru. He's so much value to offer who he is now. He's not that person, what he said there. I think that's very clear for me personally. And I think we should be judging people on who they are today and what they stand for versus, not on who they were back then. I want to give people the opportunity to grow and change and develop. So ultimately, Shawn, I feel that cancel culture is cowardly. That's my overall summary of it. I'm not to suggest that we shouldn't be canceling people for doing certain things, but as a rule, I think just getting rid of that person or a show because they said and did something a number of years ago is not the correct response to try and correct society and correct behavior. They're just saving their own ass. That's all they're interested in. They're trying to look like they're doing the right thing and getting rid of them, when really, I don't believe they're helping the situation in any way. What I would like to see is more corrective behavior, support, to be there and help that person learn and grow, and give them the opportunity and the platform to apologize if we feel that's right to do so in that case. And if required, maybe trying to help them with steps to try and overcorrect that. So in Kevin Hart's case, again, just to throw an uneducated possibility out there, is he could work with domestic violence charities or with LGBTQ communities to try and give back in some way and to try and raise awareness of how insensitive he was back then. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you tomorrow. I think we've got some great topics to talk about. I'm really interested to kind of dig into this and see whether you agree with some of my points or not. But enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. Try and join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock. If you don't worry, we'll load it up to the channel, and you can always leave a question or your thoughts in the comment section below. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll speak to you very soon.